Welcome back. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television and we're broadcasting live from Lagos, Nigeria. Today our conversation is on the 2014 budget. As we know, yesterday the Coordinating Minister of the Economy and the Minister of Finance, Dr. Okonji-Iweala, presented the budget, that is the 2014 budget estimate, to the House of Representatives and the Senate. Now let's look at some of the highlights of that budget. It has a baseline assumption benchmark oil price of $75.5 per barrel, a budgeted oil production of 2.3883 million barrels per day. Average exchange rate is $160 to 160 naira to the dollar, is the same as what was in the 2013 budget. The real GDP growth rate is 6.75%. Recurrent non-debt spending is 2.43 trillion naira from 2.80 trillion naira in 2013. Personnel cost increased slightly from the 2013 amended budget provision of 1.718 trillion naira to 1.723 trillion naira for 2014. Capital expenditure is 1.1 trillion naira. The share of capital in total expenditure is 27.29%, down from 31.9%. The share of recurrent in total spending is 72.71%. Fiscal deficit is 911.96 billion naira, and the fiscal deficit, the share of the GDP, is 1.9%. Well, the conversation continues, and I still have here with me on the program Gabriel Idahosa. He's here with me in the studios here in Lagos, and of course Eze Onyekpere is a fiscal strategy analyst. He joins us from our Abuja studios. Thank you so much, Eze, for staying with us, and thank you also, Gabriel, for sticking around. Thank you. Now let's look at the issue of implementation. The budget, the National Assembly rather, will soon be on recess, and of course I think the Senate has already gone and will not deliberate on the budget until after their vacation. What's the implication on the budget?
Well, we are not likely to get an approved budget until perhaps April by the fastest, because when they come back they will start all their hearings committee by committee, and Senate we have their position, House of Reps we have their position, they have the conference of both parties agree the budget, send it to the President to sign. All of that will certainly take us up to March, except of course they happen to work much faster and you get it perhaps end of February.
Of course, this doesn't mean that projects that need to be handled they're going to have to wait, and it's like it's a drawback, most definitely, considering that it's just 1 year, just like Eze mentioned, it's just 1 year before the elections, and so this reason really isn't what we should be looking out for.
Well, that's the issue we keep going over again and again. You make a mistake 5 years ago, you make it 4 years ago, you make it 3 years ago, you make it last year, and you make it again. So how do you explain that? Everybody knew you needed a benchmark oil price before you do a budget. You start budgeting about October. So if you had argued over your benchmark between July and September and you had your benchmark, we wouldn't be saying what we are saying now. Everybody knows where the problem is. Everybody knows the solution, but no one seems to get it right. So we will have to keep suffering year in, year out until you have the right political will and the discipline on all sides, the bureaucracy, the executive, and the legislature.
Now, I'm going to ask you this question. There have been massive defections in the National Assembly by some members. Do you see this affecting the passage of the budget in any way?
About defection in the National Assembly?
From the National Assembly.
Well, I think that what we have seen is that politics is taking preeminence over the fiscal governance system. So we will have a situation likely that this budget will drag on, maybe even after the end of the first quarter, and that there are more disagreements down the way. Like my colleague in Lagos said, everybody knows that the process should start early, so that we can also end it early and have the budget ready before January 1 of every year. And year after year, the same things are happening. We have the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which sets out the time frame clearly for preparing the MTF and for preparing the budget. But nobody is following the law. The law is there on paper, stamps on the shelf, gathering dust, and nobody is ready to implement them. So I think that it is up to Nigerians to look through the veil, so that by the time we are talking of elections in the coming dispensation, we have to literally shine our eyes to be sure that we put the right people there, because we can't continue apologizing for the same thing year after year. It is not normal.
Let's really break down the implication of the late passage of this budget, which may happen as from all indications. What is the implication this is going to have for the fiscal year?
Well, if it is passed late like in previous years, that means you start implementing the capital budget very late. Maybe by the time you release money for contractors to go to site to do road work or external construction, the rents will come. So they have to go back, they have to wait until after the rents in August, September, October. And before you know it, instead of having 12 months to implement the capital budget, we will have only done it for about 4 to 6 months. So we continue prolonging the cycle. A project that should have ended in 2-3 years, 6-7 years down the line, we are still on it. Despite the other challenges of maybe inadequate funding, we add the unnecessary politicking, which will do it's not going to do Nigeria any good. So for me, I think the challenge is that we should mount a lot of pressure on both the executive and the National Assembly to begin to take us seriously, rather than this attitude which is a bit laissez-faire. They don't care, they are playing politics. For instance, there was nothing stopping the National Assembly that had this MTF since September. There was nothing stopping them from approving the benchmark price by October, or latest by early November. And we are talking of December 20th. And they will proceed on vacation and come back on the 15th of January. So they will not even do anything before they proceed on vacation. So if we're expecting this budget to come out before March, I mean, that will be dreaming the way they are going.
So how can we get it right? Gabriel, I'm going to come back to you on that. So how can we get it right?
Well, for this year, you really cannot get it right. It's already late. So you are going to have to try to get it right next year. There is no way you are going to get it right. Absolutely no way. Because when the politicians come, they are going to play politics with the budget. Even if you didn't have defections, within the PDP, they used to play politics with the budget. This year is going to, next year,
it's going to be more interesting because we have,
it's going to be just, not just interesting, chaotic, because within the PDP, you still have the arguments about different factions of the PDP in the National Assembly itself. Then you have those who are defected, and everybody would like to prove a point with how the budget is approved. So you are going to have a very difficult situation with the budget. What we should try to do, if we want to do it right, is to agree now that every year in the third quarter you agree your MTF and you agree your benchmark.
Already they have the MTF. The one they have for them is for 2014-2016. So it's not too early for them to begin to deliberate on what the next budget should look like. That's for 2015.
No, if they want to do it right, they can do that very early. It's just the desire to do it right. Because everyone wants to make, especially at the National Assembly, there's this desire to make so much drama out of something you need to do. Like Eze said, it's not so much about the economy or about Nigeria. It's about playing politics, about showing your power in the National Assembly. So until the people in National Assembly truly believe they are elected by Nigerians to serve Nigerians, you're not going to have any change. Because if they believe that they are elected to serve Nigerians, they will ensure that the MTF, the benchmark, is done on time, that the budget presented in October is deliberated and approved by both houses by the end of November, giving the president the whole of December to look at it and sign it. It is possible, but they just don't want to do it because they are more interested in the politics of how to put down the executive, how to prove so one person is more powerful than the other, rather than keeping the eyeball on Nigerians. What do Nigerians want? When should we do it? That thinking is not there. It's a question of how do I show that the executive is not doing a good job? How do I portray them in a particular light And that's the price we are paying.
Now, Eze, looking at all the issues that have been brought up, is it realistic to say that we can attain a real GDP growth rate of 6.75% as being projected?
Well, looking at the issues that have happened, I think there is a way forward. If the Minister of Finance can prepare the MTF before at least the end of June of, say, 2014, the MTF for the following year, where this benchmark price and issues will come up, and then present it to the National Assembly by July, and let us see clearly what the excuse will be that by August, September, that they will not have approved those things they need to approve, so that the budget preparation process could start in earnest. So I think on both sides of the divide, whether it's the executive or the legislature, there were delays. But if the executive can simply finish their own part of the assignment, present it to the National Assembly on time, and put it in the public space, so that Nigerians can also begin to apply pressure on them, then we may have hope for the 2015 process. But for now, the way things are going, considering the confusion in the polity, I will likely have a scenario that where 2015 budget may even suffer more harm than what we have in the 2014 budget. So that may likely be the process we are going to experience because of the political crisis we are having in the country.
So how does this affect the GDP growth that the Ministry of Finance is projecting, and of course most global agencies like the IMF are actually predicting?
Well, if you have a budget that you cannot even implement, even if the resources are available, you cannot even use it to improve real livelihoods, you can't even use it to improve the business environment, or we have a situation where a good part of the money that was supposed to come into the Federation account is stolen by oil thieves, and all these things are happening, there is no way you can attain this kind of growth that is projected here. Even the foreign investors who are supposed to come into the country may not likely come in such an environment that looks disorganized and everything is in disarray. So the challenge or the chances of getting this kind of growth in 2014, well, is a little bit, is neither here nor there, because unless we are digging up more crude oil, pumping more money into the system, but at the end of the day, I don't see much in terms of improvements in 2014.
Well, Gabriel, now we're coasting home. It's the end of the year, and a lot of Nigerians have expectations for 2014, aside from the budget and every other issue that might come up. What are your expectations for 2014?
2014 is an election preparation year, so you expect a lot of non-economic focus of government at all levels. Everyone is going to be looking at politics. It's so in any country, so you can't expect anything different. But the point to make really from your previous question is that both local and foreign observers of the economy continue to say that our present growth rate is the worst that we can get because of the bad government that we have. That if we had a much better government, we should be growing at 9, 10, 12%. So really, this is the worst situation that you have, because the government is not getting a lot of things right, and it's just the greed of Nigerians trying to get going by their strength. Of course, one thing that the government has done this year that should help next year is the privatization of power.
So that means they've not been totally bad.
Yeah, so the privatization of power is going, I'm talking of the general perception before now, that it is because of a kind of government that our growth rate has been coasting between 6 and 7. That if we had a much better government, we should be doing much better. For next year, we expect some improvement from the
much
power.
Better government. Sorry, I think we should get this objectively. Much better government or much better policies or programs or initiatives?
No, not policies. The policies are good.
It should be the implementation. That's bad government.
Who implements a budget?
Well,
that's it. You know, if a budget is badly implemented, well, is the government that is supposed to implement it. But talking about 2014, we expect some real improvement at the small and medium enterprise level, because power should improve.
All right.
So we see that happening, and we hope that again will affect the rest of the economy.
All right. Well, Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us this morning on the program. I've been speaking with Gabriel Idahosa, he's an economist, and of course from our Abuja studios I was joined by Eze Onyekpere. He's a fiscal strategy analyst. Thank you so much, Eze, for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Well, that's the program for today. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Harriet Agbeni.